All right, everyone. So again, we are going to be talking about lesson 20 today. And before we do that, I'm going to show you a couple of things on the whiteboard that you are seeing on your screen. So again, friends, when we talk about fractions, we are talking about numbers that name equal parts of a whole. A fraction has two parts. You are going to see a fraction, for example, that looks like this. This is the fraction 1/2. 1/2. And so fractions, again, have parts. There's a part here and a part here. This top number is what we call the numerator. It is called the numerator. The bottom number is what we call the denominator, the denominator. So in taking the denominator first, the denominator tells us the number of equal parts in a whole. I'm going to say that again. The denominator tells us the number of equal parts in a whole. The numerator, or the number above, is telling us the number of equal parts that are currently being described. All right. So again, I'm going to put down here, this is going to be a D for denominator. This is going to be an N for the numerator. All right. So what I want you to consider, for example, is when we think about 1/2 of something, it is saying that we are looking at one of two parts in a whole. One of two parts in a whole. So for example, we could consider something like this, right? And we're going to call that circle, we're going to call that a pizza. We're going to call that a pizza. This is a whole pizza. This is a whole pizza. But what this fraction is telling us is that we are going to be considering 1/2 of this pizza. The denominator is telling us that this whole is broken into two parts. It's broken into two parts. So this is what we do. And we can see, based on what the denominator is telling us, that this whole is broken up into two parts. The numerator is telling us what part we are considering or describing right now. This numerator is telling me that I'm only taking a look at one of those two parts. All right. I want you to consider something else. I'm going to show you some what we call fraction bars. I'm going to show you some fraction bars, and they look like this. This is where we're headed, friends. I want you to take a look at your screen right now. And I'd like you to consider this. This is what I want you to keep in your brains as we are moving forward in this lesson. I would like you to see down at the bottom, and you can see where my red pen is pointing, right? I'm sorry, my purple pen is pointing to the red. My apologies. You can see, for example, that we have one bar here, right? This is the whole, friends. This is the whole that we're looking at right now. But I also want you to consider that everything you see above this whole, these are different ways to describe this whole. This one whole can be broken up into 2 parts. This should look familiar, 1/2, right? And this whole can be broken up into 3 parts, or into 4 parts, or into 5 parts, or into 6 parts, or 8, or 10, or 12. Every single one of these lines, friends, is the exact same value. I'm going to say that again. Every single line you see is the exact same value as this one whole. 2/2 is a whole. 3/3 is a whole. 4/4 is a whole. 5/5 is a whole. 6/6 is a whole. 8/8 is a whole. 10/10 is a whole. 12/12 is a whole. All of these lines are the same value of 1. What we are going to look at as we proceed through this unit are parts of the whole. 1/3 of this, 1/4 of this, 1/8 of this, for example. So please, friends, try to remember this and this visual, these fraction tiles and bars that you are seeing right now. All right. So you should have page 459 in front of you right now. And we're going to talk about that now. Please make sure you are taking notes as you're following along. Here we go. So how, up at the top here, how can you describe equal parts? How can you describe equal parts? So let's take a look at the model. It's going to say that fractions are numbers that tell about equal parts of a whole. Circle all the shapes that show 1/3 shaded. Now, friends, this is where you really need to pay special attention. I want you to go back to the definition of a fraction, and we're going to do that right now. Fractions are numbers that tell about equal parts of a whole. Equal parts of a whole. All right? So it's going to ask you about circling all the shapes that show 1/3 shaded. You need to ask yourself these questions, friends. First of all, do you have a whole that is fractioned into 3 parts? Because again, we're asking about 1/3. So I'm going to take the first shape. Is that fractioned into 3 parts? Yes, it is. My second question is it fractioned into 3 equal parts? Yes, it is. I can circle that one. I'm going to move on to this second shape. It looks like a rectangle tipped up on its head. Is this shape fractioned into 3 parts? Yes, it is. Is it fractioned into 3 equal parts? No, it is not. These parts are not equal. They are not equal. Nope. I'm going to move on to the next shape. Is this shape fractioned into 3 parts? Yes, it is. Is it fractioned into 3 equal parts? Yes, it is. I'm going to take a look at this fourth shape. My first question is it fractioned into 3 equal parts? No. It's fractioned into 4. Nope. So friends, the first and the third are answering the question above. To circle the shapes that show 1/3 shaded. Fractions are numbers that tell about equal parts. Do not rush through this, friends. Please read the questions and look very, very carefully. In question B, it is saying, how do you know you circled the right shapes in part A? How do you know? So let's write that in. Each shape I circled has 1 out of 3 equal parts shaded. So they show 1/3. Each shape I circled has 1 out of 3 equal parts shaded. So they show 1/3. And as we look to question number 2, it is saying there are 2 numbers to a fraction. The bottom number, as we previously discussed, is called the denominator. And that tells how many equal parts are in the whole. The top number is the numerator, and that tells how many equal parts are being described. So it says to write the fraction for the shaded part of the shapes you circled in problem 1. Problem 1. So in each of the ones that I circled, there was 1 part shaded and 3 parts in the whole. 1 part shaded, 3 parts in the whole. So let's take a look at number 3 as well. It is saying you write or name the fraction 1/3 in words as 1/3. 1/3. Those are your words to the number. In question A, it is saying, how would you write the fraction 1/4 in words? We would simply say 1 and then 4. 1/4. 1/4. How would you write the fraction 1/2 in words? 1/2. 1/2. So again, 1/3, 1/4, 1/2. If I were to ever ask you on a quiz to write a fraction in words, this would be what I would be looking for, friends, right here. All right. Let us turn to page 460. Let us turn to page 460. We're going to take a look at a few more models. Up at the top, it is saying a unit fraction has a 1 in the numerator. A unit fraction has 1 in the numerator. It names one part of a whole. I'm going to bring my fraction tiles back up for just a moment so that you can see here, friends, that this entire page of fraction tiles, you can see that every single one of these fractions is a unit fraction. 1 in the numerator, friends. 1 in the numerator. These are all unit fractions. This is telling you, for example, it is going to take 8/8 to make a whole, 6/6 to make a whole, 5/5 to make a whole, 4/4 to make a whole, 3/3 to make a whole, 2/2 to make a whole. These are all unit fractions, friends. All right. So back to page 460, up at the top, question 4. It is asking us to shade 1/4 of the model. Well, first of all, we can see that this model does have, in fact, 4 sections. It has 4 sections. It's asking us to shade one of them. So let's do that now. Is mine going to be perfect? No, it is not. It is not. I'm trying to do this on an overhead. It's not going to be perfect. But the idea is that we are shading 1/4 of the model. And now it is saying on 5, look at the same model again. Look at it again. Now it's saying shade 3/4 of the model. So here's a 4th, and here's a 4th, and here's a 4th. 3/4. On question B, it is saying, how could you count each 4th you shaded to also name the fraction? How could you do it? Well, let's do it. Let's do it now. So 1/4, and then 2/4, and then 3/4. 1/4, 2/4, 3/4. And so now it is saying simply to write the fraction that you shaded. So I shaded 3 of the 4 parts. I shaded 3 of the 4 parts. And it's asking us, how would you name the fraction from part C inwards? We would simply say 3 or 3, numerator, how many parts to the whole we're describing, and then 4ths, because there are 4 parts in the whole, and that's what the denominator tells us. In question 6, down at the bottom, it is asking us to explain why the denominator does not change the denominator here when you are counting by the unit fraction 1/4 to reach 3/4. And it is because The parts are all fourths. The parts are all fourths. So the denominator does not change. The parts are all fourths, so the denominator does not change. I'm going to give you just a few more seconds to get these notes down, and then we're going to come back together very briefly.